Hi, doing Martin Lopez from the Curiosity Theory, and today we're doing another hangout. We're doing a Saturday morning hangout, and as you know, I do a show on Tuesdays, and that's kind of a group conversation. And then on Saturdays, like a couple times a month, I want to interview somebody that wrote a book that I find very, very fascinating. Oftentimes, I find just the title fascinating, and then I dive into it and try to find out a little bit more about that. And then almost always, the content of the book is huge. My guest today is a guy named Dean Myers. His book is called The Boardroom Buddha. And I think we're very much aligned, and I think he's going to align with a lot of what you believe. One of the paragraphs he had sent me is he says, we live and work in a world that demands more results with fewer resources, which I think is absolutely true, and requires greater speed. This dynamic environment screams out for a new approach. Well, I know we could break that down all day, can't we? We could talk about that all day. Our world right now that we live in is faster than ever. I think with the whole COVID thing and all this video stuff that we're doing, it's requiring us to think a whole different way at a whole different level and be able to process faster. So we no longer have as much human touch, as human connection, and we'll get that back, but we don't have as much human touch and human connection as we had in the past. So what I believe is going to happen is we're going to have these new ways of being, they call them new normals. I don't really call it a new normal. I think it's actually a new way of being, a new way that we're going to start to process things, and we're going to see new possibilities. And I think that's going to bring us our new normal, like the seeing what's possible out there, what can we achieve, and how can we be the greatest versions of ourselves. And with that being said, I'm bringing on Dean Myers to help you and help me become the greatest version of myself, and for you, hopefully the greatest version of yourself. Dean, how you doing, brother?
Hey, good morning out in California. I'm in the ATL here, so it's a beautiful afternoon on a Saturday, and what better things to do than to join you and your audience and have a good conversation about what's happening.
Absolutely. You're the ATL representing Miami, right?
That's right. Yeah. I like the U, but I'm representing the U representing me. Yeah, there we get that thing right there. Done that a few times. But
I love it.
I'm happy to be on your show, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I love just the idea about being curious, and it's so much written about it, but yours gets to a point about what to do. But let me share with you, Martin. I know we've talked a few times, and
yeah.
I just left a 34-year career at a small company in Atlanta, Georgia, called the Coca-Cola Company.
I think some people have heard about it. I think I kind of heard about it. Like, yeah.
And I had a wonderful career, 34 years, a global job, and I spent almost 20 years around the world working with another small brand called McDonald's. You probably heard of McDonald's too. So
I've heard of them.
McDonald's and Coke in 100 countries. So that was my space. And I found a lot of success, and had some failure, and went through a beautiful career, and built a lot of value for myself and a lot of people I touched. But the last few years, I started getting very interested in how can we be better? I mean, it's just gotten so frustrating in the corporate world, or the small business or big business. You have to do more with less, work smarter, not harder. And everybody would have these buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
But how?
Grind it out. Yeah. Work. Yeah. There's all these ideas, but are people really giving you the nuts and bolts of that idea? Or are they just giving you a concept? You got to figure it out yourself. That's what's frustrating, I think.
It's frustrating. It's like the line of the year, work harder, smarter, not harder. And we're like,
do it.
Just do it. Yeah. So I started thinking, all right, what behaviors have I witnessed or experienced that when used created value? And what behaviors also created a lot of waste? Because I've had the success and failures. And I started really looking.
I'm going to stop right there. Let's go. I want to make sure we hold it. So what behaviors created value, and what behaviors created waste?
Yes.
Very, very powerful. That's a great thing to look at.
I landed on 5 principles.
Okay.
And I tested it because I used to speak around the world in internal meetings with Coke and some customers about these 5 principles, and really tried them out. And the fact of the matter is, these 5 principles, when you honor them, they will help you be successful every time.
Okay.
But the other side of the coin is when you violate these principles, you always lose. And I have so many examples of success and failure, depending on whether I honored the principle or violated the principle.
So you're saying, so you have 5 principles.
Yeah.
There you go. You have 5 principles. If you do them, you're likely to have success. If you don't do them, it's pretty clear you're not going to be successful.
You will pay a price. And
okay.
So speaking about it, and everybody would tell me, Dean, can you write a book? This is amazing, right? You know,
right. Stop telling me. Give me something to read. Yeah.
So I retired last year, and I decided to write a book. And so I wrote a book, The Boardroom Buddha, 5, and I call them universal principles because they truly are universal. It doesn't matter where you are. And one of the key insights, Martin, I asked people from many careers, a fireman, a teacher, a professional coaches, lawyers, doctors, you name it. And I asked them, what are the biggest pain points in your business? And almost every time they gave me the same answer. It's managing through the people they need to work with, and they're difficult. And it's not like for a doctor, they know how to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And a lawyer knows the law, but how do you get things done through people? So the 5 principles are just spectacular, allowing people to be better. So that's what it's about.
So it seems like what you're saying, and to me, how I would interpret it and how I'd say it from the curiosity theory standpoint is they weren't necessarily the technical problems, they were the interpersonal problems, those challenges.
Always.
Because we know how to do our job. Like if we're somewhat competent, we know how to do our job. We've been trained, we study, we do it day in and day out. So we should know the ins and outs and technicalities of our job. But
it's that person you see walking down the hall that you want to like run. You don't have that. Or that boss who absolutely doesn't care about you, only about himself.
Yeah.
And so you meet these things and they get in the way. And what's really cool that for me personally, and I've shared this with others, these principles are maybe more powerful in your personal relationships. Forget about the work.
Yeah.
Forget about the office. If it helps there, that's beautiful.
That's great. Yeah.
But can it help you with the relationships that matter most?
Yeah.
And they do.
That's what I find that the principles that you learn, that so many people are willing to practice those, like salespeople that are like top producing salespeople, and high achievers. They're willing to do those things when it comes to making the money, when it comes to grinding those things out, when it comes to putting the work in. Then they get home and then they stop doing the work. And I would be guilty. I would say that I've been guilty of that myself.
We all have. We all have. With the universal principles, they work with your daughter and son and spouse, as well as your customer and your boss and your colleague.
Yes.
They're just universal.
Yes. That's what makes them universal. So let's go over them. Let's go over the 5 ones. Let's name all 5, and then let's go hit one, and we'll just kind of like vibe through them.
The first principle, which, and by the way, these principles are all common sense, but they are not common practice if you're honest with yourself.
Which is two different things. Common sense and common practice, 2 completely different domains.
Right. So the first principle, which is hard, it's a hard one for most highly driven people to accept. It's that it's not about you.
Not about you. Okay.
Shocking. And we'll come back to them.
Okay.
The second principle, which relates to some posts you've been putting out there lately about negotiation and conflict and all that, is make the invisible visible.
Make the invisible
visible.
Okay.
And I'd love to give you an example of that. And the third, which came right out of the curiosity theory, perhaps, is my belief, strong belief, that when you are curious, beyond curiosity, I'm talking about curious squared, beyond comfortable, you create amazing success. So it's curiosity, being curious beyond curiosity.
Wow, I love that.
And the fourth one, we'll run through them quick, and I got a couple of fun stories if you want to hear them.
Yeah,
how they work or don't work. The fourth one I call is alignment before action and adjust often. And the fifth one, it's all about the people. It's all about people. Now, what's interesting, Martin, is that these five together, and I have a whole chapter in the book about VUCA, VUCA. There's a lot
Uh-huh.
written on VUCA. Are you familiar with the VUCA terminology?
I do. I don't remember what it is though, but I remember
volatility. It's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. VUCA.
Okay.
So I wrote this book about being successful in a VUCA world, essentially, upside down, crazy world. And the book was published on February 27th. Heck, COVID wasn't even here. So people forget, before COVID, it was a pretty crazy space 3 months ago.
Yeah.
5 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's kind of ironic that chapter 12 talks about being successful in a volatile, uncertain world. And yet now it's even more so, maybe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would definitely think the pendulum is moving way over in the other direction.
But it was pretty, if you just forget COVID happened.
It would have been crazy anyways.
Yeah. So this is the world we live in.
It's crazy without masks. That probably would have been the way it is right now.
Exactly. So, I use the expression that you're a San Diego guy, so you must go surfing and whatever, right? So this expression is the big waves, they keep on coming.
Yeah.
But can you learn to surf? Because they're going to keep on coming. It's not going to calm down.
Yeah.
This is before COVID. Now,
human beings aren't going to stop being human beings. We're not going to stop doing what we do. We're not going to stop trying to get our point across and have our way and using whatever influence we have to do that. I haven't seen a group of people that are saying power is not important or, we're built a particular way.
Yeah. Humans are tough. They're difficult. And so you can't always pick the ones that you like to work with. Unfortunately.
Yes, we can. Yes.
And so these principles, what's really cool about it, if let's say you and I were best friends, we know each other a little bit, and we got along, and we resolve things very easily.
Yes,
that happens with your really tight people, right?
Yes,
high trust. But most of the people you deal with in life, you don't have that high trust. Yeah, you have to try to grind through things, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, and I actually posted a post this morning on a show that I'm doing, and I was saying. And the question I asked this morning is about an hour ago is how do most fights start and what strategy do you find is the best to restore these relationships? Yeah. And people are starting to answer that question from where they come from. And I think it's what you did is I wanted to grab my phone because what you did just sparked that idea.
I saw that post. It's a great question because we all live in that. And a lot of us, sometimes they just run from the problem. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
The flight.
Fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. We're going to try to fight our way through it, and which is what I learned. I learned my style is to fight through it. I don't really run away from things, but it doesn't make me better because I don't run. It's the strategy.
So here's a strategy that relates to at least one of the principles. Mm-hmm. Principle number one, of course.
Let's start with principle one. Let's just start with principle. How about not about you? And
put your ego aside. Let the oxygen come in the room. Just being sure that you're right, guess what? Hasn't always worked for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's going to.
Mostly doesn't.
So I find it's very fascinating. I like this story that when people are interviewing for a job, we've all interviewed for a job. I've interviewed many people. I've hired many, and I've interviewed jobs myself. And I coach, the next generation, which is a beautiful thing, to mentor the people coming up. So I've coached the next gen.
Yeah.
Before they go into interviews, because they can't really go ask their parents for coaching help because that parent-kid thing doesn't work, right? Yeah. You know that with your kid, right? So typically the applicant was going to go in and talk about all the great things they've done.
Yeah.
They have a resume that's beautiful. Well,
everybody in school, I was this, I volunteer, all that information.
Everybody interviewing has a beautiful resume.
Yeah. Of course. That's right.
Okay. So then everybody
always brush their teeth before a date, right?
Exactly. So everybody interviewing is going to be talking about how good they are and how accomplished they are in their skills. So I've coached people a little differently, and it's been successful. I would say when you go on an interview, get more interested in what the person interviewing you wants than what you want to say. It may shock them. But they need to hire a person for a job. and they've got all the risk. So
Yeah.
why don't you just put how great you are to the side and get interested in what the other person is looking for? Just a little tweak of attitude.
Yeah.
Instead of this,
Yeah.
to tell me what this person will do for you changes everything. It changes everything. But it's hard to do because you feel like you got 30 minutes, you got to tell everything about yourself, and you don't win because that's what everyone does.
And for me, from my perspective, that comes from survival. Like I'm trying to, if I don't get this, I'm gonna die. Something's gonna happen to me. I'm gonna lose. I'm not gonna get what I want. So therefore, let me claw my way through, and as though what I have to say is going to impact them because I'm going to try to impress you. And let me see if I can impress you with something.
Yeah, you'll have a chance. They'll be more interested. Here's the way it goes. That person will get more interested in you after you get interested in them.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be. It's unfair. It's unfair. Why don't they be interested in you?
What if they want to talk to me? I'm the one here. I'm the one that wants the job, and I worked hard.
Exactly. But it's a very subtle thing that I've seen it. And whenever under pressure, all these principles are very important because they're easy to violate them. Like you say, you want to claw, I need this job. And when you feel pressure, you often do the wrong things. It's like you fall back to, I'm going to fight this one out.
Yeah.
You don't win.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about that in my book. Under pressure, we tend to regress. We regress when we go back to those ways, those reptilian ways, maybe a version of that. Maybe I sit back and I don't say anything, or I'm frozen. I can't even think. And my breath is shallow, so I'm not putting any oxygen to my brain versus.
That's a great point.
Let me shift this around. How do I get oxygen to my brain? Well, let me stop, be quiet, and
listen.
Take a deep breath, and maybe I'm just interested in those glasses that you have, or what books you read, or something.
Right. The physicality of it all affects you, right? To your point, the breathing. It's a great insight. It's not just up here; it's your whole body. You can feel the tension. And so these principles say, all right, I'm going to tell my story, but let me get as interested in the other person. And it works in social settings. Like next time you go to a cocktail party, when they have cocktail parties again. Right? They might have cocktail parties again. How many people you meet, all they want to do is talk to you about their story.
Them, yeah.
Their kids. You have kids now. Your kids are in high school now or something, right?
My kids they're graduated. You're
graduated. You're the whole story. Oh, my kids. But no one's asking about your kids. They all talk about their own stuff. It turns you off. It's the same story.
Well, you know what? I think for most people it does. It's a turnoff for most people. For me, and the reason the curiosity theory has been so successful is I've always been interested in other people.
Right.
And then what I did do is I then turned that into how can I then teach people to do that practice? Because for what you're demonstrating is for most people, it's not a natural practice. It's about me. Like, let me focus on me and like that.
That's right. So when you talk about the conflict, you had your thing about conflict. So my second principle, it created the biggest deal I've ever done in 30 years. It's gigantic deal by being true to that principle.
Yeah.
And so it goes something like this. We're arguing, and here's my point of view, and you have your point of view, and I have my point of view, and you said you're going to fight. You're going to tell them your point of view a little differently, but you're going to keep
getting mine in here. I'm getting mine in. Yeah.
Right. So the principle is, sometimes you have to take your point of view and put it down.
Yeah.
You haven't lost it. It's still right here.
So what is the thing? So this is interesting. And I wonder about it for myself. Like, I'm really curious about it. Is there something about human beings, about us, that we think that if we don't make our point, we're going to lose it? Or there's something like that. Like,
we want to win. We want to win. We're smart. We want to make sure, then we tell them a different way, and then we tell them louder. That's going to work, right?
Then we shake them.
Yeah, we shake them. We get crazy.
Yeah.
So it's human nature. And that's just, we don't want to lose. So we think even if we lose the deal, at least we got our point out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because because a fundamental need for a human being is just to be heard.
Yes.
Because we are so not heard.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, what is it? You step over a dollar to get a penny, and then we're willing to be heard, even if that hurts us.
Yes.
Even if we lose it, at least I was heard. And then we then turn blame and complaint and judgment. Well, it's their loss. We create a new argument about whatever it was versus what you're saying.
See, it's another version of getting interested in the other person's, because you may learn something you don't know. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so when you make the invisible, so I like to say, if you go into a meeting, the meetings would go much better if everyone wore a white t-shirt, and on the white t-shirt it said, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, and here's why I'm here. But that doesn't happen.
No. We
all walk in and we have what we want and we have what we don't want, but we don't exactly reveal it. We think we're we have to hold this back.
Yeah.
Your job, if you want to connect with someone in a deep and meaningful way, is to find out what's most important to that person, because there's something there that's not obvious.
Yeah.
Now you have to be curious as hell, obviously, to get into. You have to look for it.
You got to stay curious. You've got to stay curious.
You'll never find it if you don't look for it.
I love that. I love that you're saying that, Dean. And what I find is that so often in communication that people don't nail it on the first time. That even it can be an executive. It doesn't matter. It could be the smartest person in the world.
Sure.
They're still, for the most part, working out how they want to say what they want to say. Yeah. They're working it out. I listen to Jordan Peterson a lot, and I watch how he talks, and he's incredibly articulate. And he says every time he speaks, he takes that recording and he sits with it for 3 or 4 hours, and he listens to the words he says, because he knows that the first 4 or 5 paragraphs he said he didn't nail it. He didn't nail it, because if he did, he wouldn't have had to speak anymore.
Well, he's brilliant, and I'm going to skip number 3, which is to number 4.
Okay, cool.
So it really triggers. Let me
real quick. So I didn't completely. So it's make the invisible visible. How do we do that? Just nail that real quick for me.
Yeah, there's something there that you don't know. Assume there is.
It's bring it out. Okay, got it.
You have to bring it out, because until you do, you're never really gonna get to the essence of anything.
So we're in a boardroom. So just real quick, so we're in a boardroom and there's 6, 7 people here. I need to know what everybody's thinking. I need to know what everybody's intention is.
Yeah.
Let's get that out before. Let's take the invisible, because there's agendas, there's hidden agendas, there's whatever's going on. Let's get those out here so we can actually have a conversation, and we can just talk about everything. We can work on what we need to work on.
And the challenge is, if the trust is not there, people are going to hold things back.
Yeah.
Well, it's not as simple as, all right, what's invisible? What are you not telling me? I think the subtle way of thinking about it is, whatever I'm hearing, there's more to the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's more to the story.
Always. It all came from somewhere, right?
They may not be holding back deliberately. There's just more to the story.
Yeah. So I don't know how to say it. I need help. I need dialogue to get out what I need to get out. Like I have an idea. I have a feeling. I have something going on. I need the safety and the respect of the dialogue in this conversation to be able to get that out. I need your help.
Yes, and the active listener would be like, tell me more, gives you a chance. But if the person feels they're not listened to or they're not interested, they're going to hold that back.
Yeah.
And then the meeting ends, everybody shakes hands and they wave and they elbow this. But then what have you gotten? Half the story.
Yeah, and what we get, I believe, what we get is what we've already learned to settle for.
Exactly.
Let me give you an example. Now, I'm going to talk about the political environment to make a point.
Okay.
So everybody's talking about Democrats and Republicans and all this stuff, and there's this virus called the coronavirus. But I don't hear anybody going, who started that thing? Who made that thing? Does that person that made the coronavirus have the cure for the coronavirus? No, we're fighting Republicans and Democrats. They got us fighting about stuff. We don't get to, because we're so willing, I think, as human beings, we're so willing to fight and then get a position and hold that position that we don't look beyond that position. Like you're saying in the second, then make the invisible visible. What's invisible? I think what's invisible is that we're not even talking about the actual virus.
Well, do you know why? Use your analogy.
Mhm.
It could be the politics, but it can be anything else.
Yeah.
Where there's a lack of trust,
Hmm.
there's no making the invisible visible.
No, there's not. Yeah.
There's nothing with that lack of trust.
I say trust, safety, and respect. Those are the three things to establish always. You always in sales, in personal relationships, you got to establish trust, safety, and respect. People, you have to be able to trust you. They have to be able to feel safe. And if you take away respect from a conversation, we're gonna regress.
That's a great ad. My chapter 2 is called "Trust is a Must."
I love it.
But we talk about trust, but you're absolutely right about safety and respect completely. And so it's a very important, the book is not a how-to book per se. It's a parable about a woman in the corporate world who thinks her name's Anna and she's not being successful and she thinks she should be promoted and she can't understand what the heck's going on and it's unfair and about to give up. And she meets a person who becomes her mentor, the Buddha. And maybe the reason for Anna's lack of success has more to do with what she's been doing than everybody around her. And so it's a whole big thing about accountability and about owning your own path. But the trust is nothing's possible. Stephen Covey published a great book, The Speed of Trust. It's fantastic for your listeners.
Right there. Yeah. It's a great book.
Spot on. So well, you talked about the person that was reviewing his speeches and adjusting. So, my number 4 principle is alignment before action, then adjustment. But I'll tell you an interesting story about the adjustment. I think it's powerful because how do you know what's going to happen?
No.
Anything. And really. So
you're a ball player, right? I want to use that real quick before you go. Yeah. You're a ball player. Your job is to swing the bat and hit the ball. What the ball does after that, it's up to the ball.
Exactly. And what they do, I got to react. I have to adjust. Yes. It's a constant adjusting game, an alignment game. But you think about the business model. So we used to plan like in March for the following year. March, April, May, June. Spent 6 months planning in all the countries around the world. And in the last few years, I said, listen, guys. We spent 6 months planning. The plan's done in November, signed off. In February, we're replanning.
Let's sell Coca-Cola, okay? How about that?
I don't even think it's Coke. I think it's because they try to make they're making liars out of honest men and women. We don't know what next year is going to look like. We're educated guesses, but no one's going to say that because then they get we don't need you if you don't know what the future's going to be.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to be.
Suzanne Taylor, who's watching the show, she's a professional snowboarder. You got to meet her. You got to meet Suzanne. Suzanne, you got to definitely hook up with Dean. Yeah. And I don't snowboard, but I ski. I love skiing. And you don't know what you may go down the hill, but the next time you go down the hill, it's a different hill. And you don't know what the moguls are until you hit the moguls, and you got to adjust. You don't know what you're going to experience. You don't know the other people that are going to go until you're actually in the game, until you're in flow. And flow is what I say. That's when you make the adjustments.
On your toes. And you have to be willing to adjust, not as a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength.
Oh, yeah.
Because in a lot of environments, as a leader, if anybody's on this and you're leading a team, you have to give people permission to say, I thought this was going to happen. Now we need to adjust. Yeah. But too often organizations are afraid to admit that things didn't happen as we planned. So we don't adjust, and it gets worse. And there's the Blue Angels. You ever see the Blue Angels?
Many times.
There's a wonderful story about them. They do about 300 shows a year, maybe a little bit more.
Wow.
And it's basically the same show.
Yeah.
But after every show, they spend 2 hours reviewing the film. Now they do the same show every single day, but they spend 2 hours reviewing the details after every show. Why? Because they have to get better. Yeah. And when people make mistakes, people might die. And these are the best of the best. And they spend 2 hours criticizing, being critical, reviewing, and adjusting for the next time.
Yeah.
How often do we do that in our careers?
No, we don't. I call it stop, change, start. You stop, see if we need to make any changes. Let's get back started again. Let's get back in it.
That's the alignment, action, adjust, and then realign. Start the alignment, right? So I love it. So those are the principles, and that's a big one, and that I've seen a lot of corporate a lot of people find projects take too slow because of, I think it's, I asked people, I did a keynote. There's about 1,200 people before COVID in Atlanta. And I asked people, who here manages projects? And they all raise their hands because, in the business world, it's all projects. How many projects are ahead of schedule by 50%? No hands.
No hands.
How many projects are on schedule? Like a few hands. How many projects are running late? Hands go up. Yeah. Right. And I said the source of your alignment, the source of your success in projects, and the source of your failure is the same thing. The projects that have strong alignment early, everybody on the same page, and adjusting as needed, those projects have a chance of being successful.
Yeah.
The projects that have horrible alignment early, everyone's not on the same page, and the manager says they'll catch up later. Well, they never catch up later, and the projects go on forever.
Yeah.
And then they finally just die of exhaustion.
Oh, absolutely. And it's out of your hands. I always tell my kids when they played baseball, you sit there and you get out because you watch the ball, you struck out, right?
Right.
But you got to swing, just swing. You got to swing. You got to swing. They go, yeah, but I said, if you swing, we can make an adjustment on the swing. If you don't swing, we can't make an adjustment on the swing.
You got to be in the game.
You got to be in the game. You hit the ball, then there's a brand new game, but now you're in the game. And I love what you're saying about that. And it's very self-referential what you're talking about. Everything kind of like builds on itself, but it's not building. The way I look at this, it's not building on itself like a block, like a pyramid. It's almost building itself like a circle that if you take one part out, the circle is going to collapse. It's like it needs, it kind of needs the circle to hold it together. If you put ego in, if you don't take ego out of the way, then it's gonna deflate. It's not gonna turn out. It's gonna be manipulated. Or what's the word? It's gonna be tainted.
Right. So you'll pay a price.
You'll pay a price. I like that. That's a real good way to say that.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Curiosity. Everyone would say, of course you're curious. Of course you need to be curious. You're naturally curious. Some people are not naturally curious. How do you get someone to go out there and look where the result's not obvious? What's the best way to get someone to be more curious?
I think, well, for me, what we do in the curiosity theory is we have the person and focus on whatever their needs are, and they look at whatever need that they have. So if I have a need to be right, that's probably not going to serve the conversation. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a bigger need, like maybe a need to take on a challenge or a need to be the best me I could be.
Right.
So what I do is then what we do is then we put aside like the needs that are kind of like are the egotistical needs, the needs that are you against me, I got to win. And so if I look at a challenge, like how can I challenge myself to listen to somebody really, really clearly, then I'm challenging myself. I'm going for a need of listening. Therefore, my curiosity is served. The need is served through my listening. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And but everybody's their own version of themselves. Right. So you have to find what that need is you have wherever that is. And if your needs are simply, I just need to win, I need to be heard, then your chances are that you have a good chance that it's probably not going to turn out the way you really want it to.
You're going to pay a price. You're not going to be successful. You're going to pay a price.
Yeah, you'll pay the price. I love that. I got to keep writing that. You'll pay the price.
Really one thing on this curiosity, I used to, without spending a ton of time on this, but everybody has their own self-awareness or lack of awareness of degrees. And one of mine was and I talk about this in the book about everybody has their purpose and who they are when they're amazing. When Martin Lopez is the most amazing Martin Lopez he could be, who is he? And who is he when he's not the most amazing person?
Yeah.
We all have that.
I got stories about that.
Yeah, exactly. We all have it, So I get I don't add a lot of value when I get too judgmental. Okay. Yeah. I quickly turn that. That's personally to me. But I used to, this came to me and a coach helped me with this. You're in a meeting room and you're with people you work with. Now, let's assume that you don't have fools working with you. You've chosen people, you're on a team, they all have their skills. When you hear something that sounds crazy, the typical response, I know for me, was, oh, that's that person being crazy.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
When you hear something crazy, you need to dig deeper into that crazy person's crazy comment, because there's something you don't understand.
Yeah.
Because no one would show up in your meeting and be deliberately crazy.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do because you know what you know.
Yeah.
And so that's the curiosity. That's a piece that I've coached. And I do some coaching, some executive coaching, and helping people be better leaders. And one of it is really listen to the crazy, listen to the things that you aren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know what you know. And so I've experienced it. I've seen value in it, and I've coached others and in this curiosity space to really dig into the things that seem far off.
Yes. Yeah. And how I approach that and how I would respond to that would be that they're working out what they need to say. And at this point, somehow it sounds crazy. And I hear what you're saying too. Is like you're saying, but it's crazy from my perspective because I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understanding it might go, wow. I mean,
or it may just be crazy.
And it might be crazy, but you think about these things, and somebody said, well, let's take a telephone and put a camera in it, and let's make movies out of it, and let's like have your email go. I mean, what are you talking about? You and I when we were kids, right?
Right.
Like, what are you talking? That's Star Trek stuff, right?
Right. It can't happen. It won't happen. And that's where I think the curiosity theory and the things you talk about getting outside yourself and learning, being a learner, a listener. One of the biggest deals I ever did. Besides I played baseball and I'm a University of Miami alum and all that, and Coca-Cola, and I know McDonald's really well, is that I'm an expert in the orange juice business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how about that? It doesn't help me today, but I know everything. I know everything about the orange juice business, from the groves in Florida and Brazil, and how to grow the fruit and how to pick them and how to squeeze and process stuff. So I knew everything, and I sold orange juice all over the world. And I had this guy call me one day, and I was the expert, which is a problem when you're an expert, when you think you're an expert.
When you're the smartest guy in the room, it's a problem.
It's a problem. And this guy called me. He's from Glendale, California, actually.
Yeah.
And he was the head of marketing for IHOP, International House of Pancakes.
Yes.
Which was a customer of ours. And he says, Dean, I want you to go out to Portland, Oregon. And well, it's not really Portland, but near Portland, and visit this one store operator. He's got an idea how to sell orange juice. So I listened to him. I said, okay, I hung up the phone. I said, I'm not going out there. I'm in Houston, Texas. I lived in Houston at the time. This is in the 80s. You got to get a plane. It takes 2 days, get a car. The town was called Albany, Oregon. And I'm from Albany, New York.
Okay. Whoa.
So I'm sitting in my office going, maybe there's karma. I'll go do this.
Yeah.
So I book a ticket and I start flying out there, change planes. And the whole time I'm saying I might get fired for wasting the company resources.
Yeah.
This has to be a waste of time to go to see one guy who owns one restaurant. They're going to fire me. I said, they're going to fire me for sure.
Yeah.
But I said, let me go see what's out there. And this guy, after 2 days to get there, he gave me an idea how to sell orange juice that doubled their business immediately. And next year we doubled again. And then we took the idea to other restaurants, the Denny's of the world, and it doubled the business again. Now, I don't know anybody on this call that's had a business double lately, but a double is a pretty good hit. Okay?
That's called a grand slam, baby.
When your plan is like 14% up and you go 100, good stuff.
That's
so. Awesome. But what kills me about it, the idea was to sell orange juice in a carafe instead of buying the glass. Because think about it, people, it's expensive. You got a family. It's like the most common sense, obvious thing you can think of.
Yeah. And
I didn't think of it. And I was the expert.
Yes.
And it bothers me today now I found it, I listened to it, I went out and got it, and then I made it happen. but how come I didn't think of it? And so it always haunts me to be careful. Everybody's an expert in what they're doing at some level, but you've got to have that a little humbleness about you. What am I missing?
Yeah.
Because it could change your life and change your career, that one idea. And I think that's being curious also, and not being sure you have all the answers.
I love it. I kind of wrote down a version of how I would kind of go through what you said. So there's an idea out there, and the curiosity says, maybe. So we start to consider the idea. And then what immediately happens is what stops us enters. Like, I can get fired. This is a terrible idea. I'm not going to do it. I got, the plane, everything, all the considerations on the other side they'll always come in. That's the way it is.
They push you to stop being so out there.
Yes. And they flow easier than the ideas to go do the great thing, right? To be courageous, to really give it a shot, to be
take a chance, take a risk. 100% right.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the principle, and it relates to all the stuff you teach, is called be curious beyond curiosity.
I love that.
You got to really force yourself to see what's beyond the next wall and the next one. Now, I'm not saying spend 9% of your hours in that space. You still have to deliver, the mail.
Yeah.
But you have to carve out some of your time to do the crazy stuff, to do the things that may not return necessarily the results, but you may go somewhere with it. So that's.
I always find that's, I always think about my kids playing ball. Whenever they swung the bat, they walked in the dugout like, I can't wait to get up next. When they struck out, watching.
Yeah.
They came back with their heads down, and they almost always blamed it on the pitcher.
Yeah.
When you swing, you take responsibility for your swing, because that's where you make adjustments. But you're not going to adjust if you're not playing the game.
You got to take swings. Take more cuts.
Raise your hand. Raise your hand in the boardroom. And the whole idea of the curiosity when we go into corporations is to show that respect, safety, trust, safety, and respect are critical. And like you said, when people are talking, be willing to listen. Suspend judgment, blaming, and complaining. Suspend those three things.
Yes.
You can suspend judgment, blame, complaint. Your life will be a completely different life.
I like the analogy of this taking a swing. Take your swings. Unfortunately, what happens in the corporate world or in business, that when there's uncertainty, which there is now, and volatility, people are afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid of their health. They're afraid of their livelihood. They're afraid of their careers. Everything just changed 4 months ago. They thought this was going to happen. Now maybe. And unfortunately, what happens is that people will retract.
Yeah.
And they'll take less chances, and they'll try to stay under the radar.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, from a leader that managed global teams, the person that stays under the radar is not the person I want on my team.
Yeah.
It doesn't really serve your purpose to make your box smaller.
Yeah.
But in times of change and volatility, the person that can expand their box, let me go do that. Let me add responsibility.
Yeah.
Those are the people that, when invariably the companies are going to say, we're cutting people. Sales aren't there. It's going to happen to everybody. I mean, you can't go from this much business down to this much business and keep the same people. That's unfortunate in life. So you don't want to be ones that are cut. You want to be the ones that says, this person, Martin Lopez, took on 2 extra projects. And yet it's the opposite of what people do, though. Some people think they make their box smaller and they think it's safer.
If I can hide. And what do we get from that? Our morale's low, right?
Yeah.
We start living in the past. We start living in fear.
That's right.
We don't take chances. And if we're ever challenged, we're not going to take on that challenge because we're living here. We're living with low morale. We're living with fear. Versus what I hear you saying is like, live an inspired life, live a creative life, be willing to take chances.
Yeah. Do more.
Anything. Go ahead.
Do more. Do more. And I know it's not necessarily fair sometimes. Why do I have to do more? I have a big job, a full job. in times like this, at the end of the day, corporations and businesses, many, not all, some are booming because of changes in the economy, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. But many aren't booming. Then be the person to take on more responsibility. Be known for that. I guarantee you, when those conversations take place, and they do take place, and we've got to go from 15 to 12, and who the 3 that's going to be cut, and it happens everywhere around the world. You don't want to be the person that's not doing less. You want to be the person that says, how can I do more?
Absolutely. Where my office is, there's a Mexican restaurant right next door, and Patty is the owner of the Mexican restaurant. And so, when they had, when you go into a restaurant, you can't eat in the restaurant, and she owns the property and this huge parking lot. Yeah. And one day I walked in, and this is before the whole thing where you can have, in California, you got to eat outside, that kind of thing. And I looked here and I said, how's sales, Patty? And she goes, there's down, because people come and they want to eat here. Right. And I looked outside and I said, why don't you put those picnic tables out? Why don't you spread the picnic tables? Well, she went to Costco and bought a bunch of round picnic tables and then bought a fence because she didn't have a fence. So she built a fence and a fence, and she's got this huge restaurant. Everybody eats outside. And then she's got at nighttime, it's fun. And, it's just this really cool thing. And she was willing to take a chance. She was willing to do it. And she was really one of the innovators of what everybody's doing in California right now, at least in San Diego.
Yeah. And so that principle 4, she had a business, everything was cool. Then COVID happened and everything wasn't cool. So how do I freeze and just hope it goes away? Yeah. Or do I stay under the covers and it'll change soon? Instead, nothing changes quickly, right? It just keeps on getting more volatile. Yeah. She made the change, and now she realigned with her customers. And then I'm sure she's a great business person, and she'll figure out what's next, because there's going to be something next that needs to happen. And that's the way it works, right? Yeah. I love that. That's a great example.
Suzanne says, I can't wait to come eat Mexican.
All right, Suzanne.
Come on over. We got the best Mexican food in town. I love Patty, but that's not the best Mexican food around, but it's good. I'll take you to a better place. So let's talk a little bit about your book. Let's just dive in your book for another 5 minutes, and then we can finish up. So people told you should write a book. You wrote a book.
Yeah.
It's a parable.
It's a parable, and it's an easy story.
Quick read.
It's an easy read. It's a 2-hour read. Nice. After each chapter, I put my own insights into it. So the story goes on about Anna, and she's frustrated because it's not fair. It's just not fair why she's not being recognized. Okay. She learns through these principles. By applying these principles, she can see tremendous success in real life examples. Now, these are, it's a fictitious story, but the examples are very close to real things I've experienced.
It's like case studies that are in this parable.
Yeah, it's a story about Anna, and Sam's the mentor and her friends, and there's a great example where she's a buyer. That's her job. She's a purchasing person, and she's upset because her supplier is not coming to her with better ideas. Sure, anybody who's been in that supplier buyer thing, you've seen that. And so Sam, the Buddha, says, "What's important to your supplier?" And she says, "Why does that matter? I'm the buyer. I'll tell them what's important."
Exactly. I know. I studied them. I know.
Sam says to Anna, "How's that working for you?" Right? So why don't you ask the supplier how you as a buyer can be a better buyer? What are you talking about? Well, of course it's upside down. Just do it and see what happens. Yeah. And after the supplier picks herself up off the floor for being shocked that the buyer cared, you might learn something that can make the business relationship much better. And that's a great example that we have to, even though it's not the way it should be. I mean, you have to change the game and get interested in the other person. You don't lose anything.
I'd like to challenge you on that. Yeah. I think it is the way it should be. I think, I don't like the word should. I don't really like that word because it's not a big word for me, but using that word, I would say that it is the way it should be. If I'm a customer, it should be that you're asking me what I need. It's because how our culture is set up, it's counterintuitive in our culture, but it completely 100% supports forward move growth.
Yeah, I mean, as far as a customer, you have to find out the customers pay the bills. I mean, listen, if Coca-Cola wasn't paying attention to their customers and consumers, the doors would close. That's the business.
Yeah.
But I was thinking from a traditional buyer. I'm a buyer of sugar or something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, anything. Yeah.
And people who think they're the buyers, I've procured orange juice and I've also sold orange juice. I've been on both sides of those things.
Yeah.
You know, you don't always have to act like you're the person dominating, because it doesn't work that well. No one, even though you have power, doesn't mean you use it.
Yeah.
And so you have to keep on thinking about what's important to the other person, what's happening there. It doesn't mean you give them what they want, but at least you need to learn what's important. And that's why there's a question, and this is gold right here. Okay, this is gold. This is one question. And the question is not why do you need this or why or what's going on. What's most important to you about this thing we're working on?
Yeah.
Just ask someone that question. Yeah. Not what do you want? Not why do you want it?
Yeah.
What's most important to you about this meeting or about this business? And it causes the person to think a little deeper.
Be curious. And causes them to be curious.
Exactly. And it's a very powerful way to open up, versus like you would never say why. You know, why? Because that's how I feel. That's why. You don't get any answers with why. You should fill why out.
Susan's then says when, and it means what's important now. What's important now?
Yeah. What's important to you now?
Now.
What's important to you? Not what do you want to do or what, you know, why? What's important to you? And you get answers that allows you to build off of and find something to agree with. Now, these obviously are powerful when you have a tough conversation. When there's easy conversations, you know how to operate.
Yeah.
These principles are powerful under the most difficult environments.
Well, I like them in easy conversations to go to the next level. I think when we're aligned in together, then we can implement these things to go to the next level. Like, okay, hey, we're doing really good. You and I have a business. We're doing really good. Is there a place that I can set myself aside, set my ego aside versus, you know, I'm going to celebrate and go, what is it we need to do now? What is it we want to do? Dean, what is it you want to do now? We're doing great. What else do you want to do? Like, where are you thinking now? You know, and I think the principles happen in conflict, but they also happen in going to the next level in creativity. And when you're winning,
completely, because they're just universal.
Yeah, I love
it. But I find them powerful. Most when things are going great, people know how to make things go great. Okay, and the principles help. But they're really powerful when you're stuck.
Yes.
And things aren't going the way you want. And what's the tools to unstick you? And these principles, if you have them like in your pocket, in your mind, they're available to you. They don't cost you. You have to be aware of them.
Yeah.
It's not trickery, but when you feel the car going off the road, you know, you can keep on going off the road and be right. Or
there was a line here before.
Yeah, it's not my fault the line's gone.
That's right. There's a stop sign here, I'm sure.
Yes. Or you can stop and say, what's changed here?
Yeah.
Really try to get us back on track. Yeah. And it allows, it doesn't mean you don't shoot for what you want. Of course, everybody has things they want and need.
Yeah.
But it's how you get that may be the, you know, and there's a word, and my team was so tired of me saying this, but just because it's everyday thing, you're going to get aligned with the person you're working with sooner or later. How and when is up to you.
There you go.
How many times do you get agreement with someone after there's blood in the streets?
Yeah.
It's still not very good, is it?
I use that. I use the story. Like, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, right? And there might be somebody that you is your enemy. When I was a kid, I got in a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And that guy that was my enemy, once we got in a fight, we were best friends.
Right.
All
Okay.
right, we know who knows how to beat the other person up. We know who's the better. All right, let's move on. You know,
Maybe
it's
earn
like
some
that. The
respect.
struggle happens, and then when you do the conflict, when you work through it, it's kind of like whatever the truth was. I find comes out whatever the truth was about that conflict, it or what you were holding on to somehow gets released. It's just all right. We're done.
And you
How about
find
we work
something,
together now?
and you find something you can agree with, and maybe in that example, all of a sudden the lack of respect, now there's respect, and build from that. 'Cause,
Yeah,
think about those the brawls you have. I guarantee you, they're often from lack of respect. You can almost put it there every time, right?
yeah, absolutely, hundred
And who
percent.
likes to get disrespected? No
That's
one.
cool. So let's wrap up. So you've brought so much goodness, so much.
I want to give you one more thing, though. I want to give you one more
Okay, yeah,
thing
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
that's powerful about people and teams. The fifth principle I call about people. One thing that is really important in business and life is those two things I want to just bring out, which I think are so powerful. When you pick your team, like when you're on the playground and you're going to play basketball, perhaps, and you pick players to be on your team. You pick the players that are going to help you win. You don't always pick the players you're friends with, because if you lose, you're sitting on the sideline with your friends.
That's right.
Right. So in business, I think you have to be brutally spot on about getting the best talent, ruthless at getting the best talent in your organization, because you cannot win without the best talent. Talent wins. Now, behaviors and all that, of course, but you've got to get the right talent. And it's too often we take the person because we like the person, this and that. What's the game here, right? What are you trying to get done? That's one. And the other thing is, I think it's really important. Don't do groupthink about things. It's each individual has a perspective. So if someone asked me, what does the team at the Curiosity Theory think of this webinar? I would say there's probably no one named Curiosity Theory as part of the team. There's Martin Lopez, and I'm going to ask Martin what he thinks. So people would ask me, hey, Dean, what does McDonald's think of Coke Zero? It's a logical. I've been asked that many times. And I would say there's no one I work with at McDonald's Corporation with the name of McDonald's, because Jose's got a different point of view, and Francesca a different point of view, and Bobby. You got to take it personal, because individuals have points of view, corporations don't. So it's something that you can really fall into a trap, and you won't be as successful.
My mic's acting up. Let's see if I got it. Can you hear me now?
I got you.
Okay,
anyway,
cool.
Let's wrap then. How we doing here?
Yeah. So first off, how do people get your book? And then which is the first thing, and then I want to kind of find out what you do, and so that people know how to get a hold of you so that you can change their lives. So how do people get your book?
Yeah, great. So it's on Amazon right now, and it's the Boardroom Buddha. And
Love that name. Great name for a book.
Kindle, and it's also a paperback. And I'm beyond pleased with the reception from people, not just friends of mine, people who I've never met before. They got the book. I've done a few webinars, and they got the book, and I get notes, and they say, I love this, and I love principle number 2. I use it all the time. I mean, it's very rewarding. So on Amazon, you'll have it tomorrow. And I have a website. It's deanzmyersconsulting.com. And you can be there, and hit me up on LinkedIn or Facebook. You can LinkedIn. I'm on that a lot. And it's Dean Z. Myers.
Nice.
So I do coaching. I do, I'm not working full time. I'll do a couple or 3 clients at a time. And we do one's a group. We do like 3 people at a time. And I've done one-on-one. This is a global sales organization I was working with, and just help them see things that their boss doesn't see or they don't see. And that's the beauty of coaching, right? You give them a way forward. So I'll take on clients for coaching. And whenever we have meetings again, I'll do keynotes, which I love doing. It's so much fun, and we have a blast, and we'll do some book stuff. But I think that'll be next year.
Well, I thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I really do. And I can't wait to get you on some of my Tuesday shows, because I love what you bring. Yeah,
good, great. Listen, the Curiosity Theory, if everyone could be a little more curious, it just creates creates value. I know, and I'm looking forward to. I've read the excerpts from your book, but I'm diving in because it's not easy for everybody to be curious.
No,
Even
it's not.
it's not easy, but I think that book would help.
Sometimes it requires courage.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Martin. We'll do this again. All the best to you and all your friends out in California and the surfers and all those dudes out there. So, see you guys.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for hanging out.